Since then, we have taken over the government, and of course, lots of people want to know what kind of a government is this? Is this going to be another government that will impose all kinds of restrictions on the people? I was once accused, of course, when I was Prime Minister in the previous government, of being a dictator and a corrupt leader. Strangely, the very people who accused me of being a dictator and a corrupt person decided to ask me to lead them. So now I am leading an opposition party which has taken over the government. We have a tough job simply because the last government left behind a lot of unpleasant legacies. For example, they borrowed too much money, far beyond the ceiling determined by the government. They have undermined the system of governance. They have done a lot of harm because they did not rule according to the rule of law. And so we now face a tough task of trying to turn around the country. In the first place, of course, we need to pay our debts. We need to reduce the debts to a reasonable level so that it doesn't swallow up all the revenues that we make in the process of governing the country. At the same time, of course, we need to reconstitute almost the ruling administration because they too were affected by corruption. And we are left with younger people who are not very experienced. At the same time, of course, I must admit that the new government is without experience. They were, for 60 years, they've been fighting against the government. They know very well how to oppose, but to become the government is a different matter, and we are slowly adjusting ourselves to become the government and not the opposition. Although sometimes streaks of the old opposition would appear and be adopted by the current government. But we're taking care of that. Since then, we have been able to reduce the debts to a reasonable level. It was more than 1 trillion before. It's now about 80% of the GDP. We need to reduce that to about 54%. But we think we are on the way to doing that. It will take about 3 years to do that. The administrative machinery has now been refurbished almost, and they are working quite well. The politicians too are adjusting, and I believe that within 3 years we would get the government going. As far as investments and the economy is concerned, we are business friendly. We want people to come and invest in our country, and for that we have made the country very stable. We are very business friendly. We want to talk to business people. We will accommodate to their the requests, etc., as much as possible. We have already achieved results. And now a lot of foreign investors have come into the country to invest in various industries. We also have some people who are pulling out. Foreign investors are pulling out from the stock market, but that's all right. In any case, many countries are experiencing problem because of the U.S.-China trade war. That has affected us too, but we are not as badly affected as other countries. The GDP is still growing, and per capita income also is increasing. And we think that we are on the right track to revive the country. But we would like to have more investments into our country, and negative reports about Malaysia, of course, is not something that helps us recover. We need to have true reports, not anything that is unduly favoring Malaysia, but the true report on what is happening in Malaysia. For one thing, not many newly developing countries have been able to change government without violence. And after the election, there would be continuous violence, and the administration normally fails and may even be overthrown. But in Malaysia, the switch from the old party to the new party was done without any violence, and the previous government accepted that they have been defeated, although they know very well that if they were defeated, the leader of the previous party would face charges for corruption and abuse of power in the courts. And today he is being tried in the courts for what he did during the period when he was the Prime Minister of Malaysia. So that is the background, and I will be happy to take your questions.
Okay, so we're going to take questions from the media. I'll need you to come up, give your name and your affiliation. I'd like to keep people to one question, please. So we'll start here with Monzrel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahathir. Last time when you came to the club, it was my privilege to MC. And now I'm asking you the question that, as my colleague President mentioned, that you are prime and peak of your career. You look like still very healthy and fit. When you were elected last year, it was reported in the media that you intend to lead the country for 2 years and then hand over to younger leadership. Is it still on? And if it is still on, who is the young leader you're looking at? Is it Anwar Ibrahim? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that question. Long before we entered the elections, we already decided on the leadership of the party. We had formed a coalition of the opposition parties. There were 4 parties altogether, and we need to ensure that the 4 parties do the same thing, work together, and they need a leader. And they chose me to be their leader. They chose me the leader as well as the potential Prime Minister of Malaysia. They also decided that I should be Prime Minister for a certain period of time, not fixed at 2 years, but a certain period of time. And it is a fact that you will be an interim Prime Minister. Well, I need time, of course, to put things right in order to hand it over to the next person. The next person's name has also been accepted, and that is Anwar Ibrahim. Anwar Ibrahim was in jail at that moment. We had him released and pardoned. Now he is a member of parliament, and therefore he is in a position to replace me or to succeed me when I step down. But as to the exact period of stepping down, that has not really been determined. That is my promise. I will stick to my promise.
I would like to ask a question, Prime Minister, if I could. You mentioned about Malaysia being open for business, and you've also been reviewing Chinese investments in the country since your administration took over. Could you give us an update on where those projects are?
The previous government entered into some kind of agreements on several projects in Malaysia. We felt that the contract was overpriced, and there seems to be some evidence of corruption there. And we decided, long before we became the government, we decided to do away with the projects. However, to do away with the project or to cancel the contract would involve us in compensation, very heavy compensation. So instead, we decided to downgrade, reduce the cost. And we renegotiated with the contractors. Eventually, the contractors were able to bring down the cost. In the case of the East Coast Railway, they brought it down by 20 billion Malaysian ringgit from about 60 billion. That's a very big reduction. And now we have decided to go ahead with the project. We also have other projects which we may have to delay or to reduce the scope or the cost. This is what we are doing, but in all things we do by negotiation. We don't suddenly cancel contracts and renege on the promises or the contracts that have been entered into by the previous government. This is doing quite okay. We have now reduced the cost by quite a considerable amount of money. We are not going to build the high-speed railway because we want to take 2 years before we decide. And there is also a connection with the Singapore Underground Railway. That too, we are studying whether it will be beneficial to us or not. Will take 6 months to do that. So these are settled amicably between the Malaysian government and the contractors to the previous government.
Anthony?
Anthony Rowley, South China Morning Post and other publications. Prime Minister, the so-called China-US trade war is obviously becoming something much more than that now. It's becoming a techno-strategic economic war. I just wonder how you feel this is going to play out. And also the balance of power now in the region. On the one hand, you have a very strong US-Japan alliance. On the other hand, you have China with India somewhere and Southeast Asia caught between the two, if you like. So 2 questions then. How is the trade war going to play out, and how is the balance of power within this region? All big questions, but I'd love to hear your assessment.
Thank you. Well, trade war is stupid. It doesn't serve any purpose. It only disturbs the even progress of the economies of all kinds of countries, including Malaysia. We would not like to have the US-China trade war if more reasonable minds take over. But at the moment, we have to accept that there is a trade war, and it affects us because we want China to be rich enough to be a great market for us and for the rest of the world. China has 1.4 billion people, very productive people, and they definitely can become a very big market for the whole world. And for Malaysia, which has a positive trade balance with China, prosperity of China is good for us. But also we have a trade balance in our favor with the United States. We like to continue that because I believe that the way to treat relations is not to be confrontative. Yes, today China is exporting a lot, but you were frightened of China when it was poor. Now you are frightened of China because it's rich. What should China do? They can't be in between. So we have to accept the fact is that the Chinese have come around and they are now very rich and they are using the money perhaps to enhance their position. One should remember that when the European powers were very powerful, they conquered the rest of the world. China has not yet conquered us. We have been in trading with China for 2,000 years, exchanging jungle products with their lacquerware and the like, but they have never invaded our country. We had good relation. We had established relation with Europe in 1509. Portuguese came to Malaysia. 2 years later, they came and conquered Malaysia. So far, China has not conquered Malaysia. I think China should think that it's not worthwhile conquering countries. Then you become responsible for the prosperity of their country. So we would like to see peace return or less confrontative attitude be seen between America and China. Whether America likes it or not, China is going to be a powerful country. It has a population that is bigger than the whole of Europe and North America. That is a very big market, a huge market. maybe the per capita income is low, but over time it's going to grow. And China can be a world by itself. It can trade within the country. That's how it grew in the first place. But with China becoming richer, the world can benefit from finding a rich market. The only thing is that competition with China is very tough, but there are certain very positive strengths in the U.S. For example, the U.S. is very good at building airplanes and engines and the like. And they should expect the Chinese to try and catch up with them. But Americans are very innovative, very inventive. They should be able to compete in areas where they have strength. But producing kitchen utensils and things like that, I think that is no longer for the market. The market does not accept European or American goods because out in the East we have so many countries, Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, and others, producing the same products with a lower price and actually now of better quality than those produced in Europe. That leave it to the Asians. But concentrate on the things that you do best and try and compete. Don't try and conquer. Don't go around asking people to have a change in government, and you don't change, I will send warships to your country. This is the old gunboat diplomacy that you find before. It's out of date.
Could I follow up on that, Prime Minister, and ask what is Malaysia's view of Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications company, and allowing it to do business in your country?
Well, Huawei may be powerful in spying or whatever. They can spy as much as they like because we have no secrets. We can't tell them better these technologies and all that. But America is apparently afraid of the advancement made by Huawei, and they are suspicious that Huawei might be able to spy on them. Maybe that is ground for condemning, but I think that is not the way to go. You should have to compete with them in areas where you are strong. And I'm quite sure for a long time, the CIA, for example, have been reporting on everything that is done in Malaysia and China. We did not carry out a boycott of America because of that. They have that capacity. Now Huawei has got that capacity. Let them do their worst. You try. You know, when Israel anticipated attacks by rockets from the Palestinian, they have this what they call amazing system of protecting their country from missiles. I'm quite sure America can do what they like to stop Huawei from stealing their secrets. But off and on, they will find somebody who will leak. That is a different matter, of course.
Yeah, Isabel first.
Isabel Reynolds from Bloomberg. I'd like to ask about the problem of plastic waste in Southeast Asia. I understand that you're going to be sending some back to Canada and back to Australia, but some of it also came from Japan. Will you be sending that to Japan, or have you already?
Yeah. Well, waste is going to be a problem for the whole world. You're producing too much waste, and you have problem trying to get rid of the waste. Landfills and all that doesn't serve any purpose anymore. You cannot burn the waste because of the smoke and all the other pollutants. So it is grossly unfair for rich countries to send their waste to poor countries simply because the poor countries have no choice. Maybe it contributes a little to their economy. But they send this plastic waste to Malaysia. We cannot accept that kind of idea that waste from rich countries should be sent to poor countries. We don't need your waste because our own waste is enough to give us problems. And now, of course, plastic is some non-biodegradable. And we need to get rid of such waste in a way that doesn't pollute the environment. You give us the waste, then you are going to help us to insist that we pollute the government by getting rid of the waste. But please remember that when you pollute one part of the world, you pollute the rest of the world also, because these things tend to float all over the world, including what is important is that in Malaysia we reject the use of nuclear power simply because our knowledge of nuclear material is not adequate in order to reverse the process and render the material harmless. So it's better that plastic waste and others, we reduce the usage of plastic waste, and we are doing that in Malaysia. No single-use bags to be used, no plastic straws and all that. It is incumbent upon the whole of the world to reduce their consumption of waste of plastic so that we don't pollute the world, but don't send the waste to poor countries.
Calvin.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for coming to the club. My name is Khaldun Azhari, Pan Orient News for the Arabic media. There are two flashpoints in Asia, in North Korea and Iran, namely about the nuclear program of those countries, and that threatens to develop into war, according to most reports. And we heard recently that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is going to Iran to mediate between Tehran and Washington to stop this stress between these two countries. Do you think this might lead to bigger Asian roles in solving international problems away from the Western countries who invaded other countries? Do you see a role for Malaysia in this regard? I remember that in many Arabic media surveys, you won the selection to be the best prime minister of Arabic countries, so they invited you to go and rule there. But you that would be really a very good way to solve the problems within the Asian family. That's what the policy there. And today you attended Future of Asia conference, so maybe you talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my belief is that there will always be conflicts between nations. At any one time, there will be conflicts between various nations in various parts of the world. But what is important is how you settle the conflicts. If you resort to war and threatening people, sending warships and all that in order to threaten, it doesn't help at all. The way to resolve conflicts is through negotiation, arbitration, or a court of law. Now, we have this problem in Southeast Asia. Malaysia had problems with our neighbors, of course. We had problem with Indonesia, overlapping claim. We had problem with the Philippines, overlapping claims. We had a problem with Singapore. We had problem with Thailand. But we are at peace with them. We are not at war with them. We settle our problem first through negotiation that fails, and everybody did not accept arbitration. So we went to a court of law. We went to the World Court. And we accept that whatever decision is made, we will accept. With Singapore, we went to the World Court, and unfortunately, I think the World Court was influenced by drinks or whatever. They gave the island to the island that is further away from Singapore is given to Singapore. The island that is further away from Malaysia is given to Malaysia. There's something, but of course that is the court, and we respect the courts. We have problem with Philippines, with Indonesia. Again, claim, and we decided to go to the court. In that case, the court was very nice, awarded the islands to Malaysia. I'm thankful for that. We have a problem with the Philippines, but we say, well, are you going to conquer the country? Are you going to have a war? No. I think it's there just like that. The problem is there, but we have good relations with the Philippines. With Thailand, there was a part of the sea which is claimed by Malaysia and Thailand. What we decided to do was to negotiate with them. We say that whatever is produced there, we share 50-50. So no war. But we see very sophisticated, highly civilized countries resorting to threats. That is almost as if we are primitive or just don't know how to live with our neighbors. Whether we like it or not, we have to have neighbors, and neighbors can sometimes be, well, a pain in the neck. So we should try and talk to them, have a conference, get a neutral party to bring us together, and talk sense. Don't talk about killing people, destroying countries. Look at what happened in the Middle East. You go and interfere with their politics, now they're killing each other. And where they were stable before, of course, with a dictatorial government, but at least the killing was not as much as we see now. You try to impose your system on people who are not yet ready for the system, the result is not something better but something worse. So for me, the best way to solve problem is to negotiate. If you feel that, you have to maybe arbitrate or go to a court of law. And these people are the very people who talk about the rule of law, but they ignore international law. Thank you.
Svetlana Vasiliuk from Meiji University. I would have a relatively easy question. Dr. Mahathir, what is your secret to such incredible vitality, stamina, mental and physical longevity? Please share that with us. Thank you.
Well, about every press conference I attend, I get asked this question. And in fact, my friends asked this question. And once I was eating, and they took a picture of me eating, and there was a box of vitamins with the name of the vitamin there. And in Malaysia, at one time, all the pharmacies sold out all their vitamins because they think it is that vitamin. But actually, I have a simple life. I don't overeat. I am very careful about the things I do. I'm moderate I don't get too angry with people who call me nasty names. And I think generally it's about eating. Of course, you have to do exercise and all that, and you have to get enough sleep. But eating is what is destroying a lot of. There is too much obesity in this world. People eat too much. Well, some people are starving and dying, but the rest, they are eating too much, eating too fat, giving too much work to their heart, and they don't live very long.
Yes, the lady there, please, and yeah, yes.
Elaine Lees from Reuters News Agency. I'm going to jump the subject a bit, and I'm going to ask about rare earths. The Australian company Lynas and your government are currently in negotiations. Is the Malaysian government satisfied with Lynas's recently outlined plans to build a processing plant in Australia? And do you expect the government to renew Lynas's license? Thank you.
Well, when we invited Lynas to invest in Malaysia, we didn't expect that the waste would be a problem to us. A huge amount of waste is the result of the process, and the waste has got some radioactivity. And Malaysia has had bad experience with radioactivity. In the past, a certain byproduct of tin mining was used in order to produce color television. But to do that, they had to activate the material becomes radioactive. And then now, of course, color TV doesn't use that material anymore. They use LED. So what do we do with the waste, that the material that has been activated? We had a tough problem talking with the business people. Eventually, we agreed that we should bury the waste. So 1 square kilometers of land was dedicated to burying this product. So since then, we don't like radioactive material. And since liners produce radioactive material, we wanted them to ship out the radioactive material back to the country where the raw material comes from. But the country doesn't want to accept it. But we are going to talk to them. But if we fail, of course, we need to do something with the raw material, maybe spread it somewhere so as to not to have concentrated radioactive material in one place. But we will allow liners to carry on, because otherwise, of course, we are going to lose a very big investment from Australia.
Okay, the gentleman at the back there. If anyone else has questions, please raise your hand, make yourself known.
My hand for a while now.
I know, we have a list.
I am a reporter of French-Japanese internet television. I have one question. How did you abolish consumption tax? How do you secure a source of revenue? Thank you.
So.
Abolishing the consumption tax. If you abolish the consumption tax, how do you gain revenue? Is that the question? And is that about Japan and its plan to raise the consumption tax, or are you referring to Malaysia? Malaysia, okay.
Well, I don't think we have a tax on consumption, excepting that if you import material, I mean food for consumption, of course there is an import duty sometimes, but not always. But generally in Malaysia, we don't really tax people who consume food, for example, because Malaysia is a place where we have restaurants from all over the world, and we like people to consume food. We don't tax them. So I am not aware that we are taxing consumption.
Sir.
Benjamin Fulford from Weekly Geopolitical News and Analysis. By the way, I went to university with your son, Chris. Very nice man. Okay, my question is, can you tell us anything about what happened to Malaysia Air Flight 370-17? Anything at all?
Yeah. Well, the plane belongs to Malaysia. It was piloted by Malaysians, and there were Malaysian passengers, but there were also Dutch passengers. Maybe the majority were Dutch and also Australian. The plane crashed, and we discovered the black box. So strictly speaking, we should be involved in examining the black box. We may not have the expertise, but we can buy expertise. But for some reason or other, Malaysia was not allowed in to check on the black box to see what happened. It was done it was given to Holland. They had a small committee involving some countries, and they decided to examine, and their conclusion was that Russia is guilty. Now, we know that the missile was made in Russia, probably. It could also be made in Ukraine, but it was a Russian-type missile which brought down the plane. But as to who fired the missile, they are accusing Russians of firing the missile. But what is the evidence? We need strong evidence to show that it was fired by the Russian. But it could have been the rebels in Ukraine. It could even be the Ukrainian government because they too have the same missile. So while we agree that the plane was brought down by a Russian missile, we cannot say that it comes from Russians shooting, launching the missile. We don't know why we are excluded from the examination, but from the very beginning we see too much politics in it. The idea was not to find out how this happened and all that, but they seem to be concentrated on trying to pin it on Russia. This is not a neutral kind of examination. Had it been a neutral party examining and making conclusions, we are always willing to accept. But here we have parties who have some political interest in the matter, and they examine. So at this moment, we accept the report from Holland, but only up to the point where the plane was brought down by a missile made by the Russian. As to who fired the missile, launched the missile, we cannot yet be certain. People from Russia, they are military people. Military people would know that it is a passenger plane. Local people, guerrillas and people like that, they see a plane, they don't know what plane it is. You see, but military people will know exactly this is a passenger plane from Malaysia. You can even see, nowadays you can see the plane because you know the scopes and all that are very, very powerful. So I don't think very highly disciplined party would be responsible for launching the missile.
And there's a follow-up from the lady there, yes.
Elaine Lees from Reuters again. I'd just like to clarify your response on Linus when you said they'd be allowed to carry on. Does that mean that Malaysia will renew their license? Thank you.
The license is still there with them, but it's going to expire. But when it's time to expire, we think we'll have to renew the license.
The gentleman there, yes.
Thank you very much. I'm Yasu Tanaka, equivalent fiction writer. Used to be governor of Nagano Prefecture and a member of the House of Representatives. You used to use a slogan, look east, that means run from Japan. And now Japan is well known as low birth and low birth rate and old age country. And not only Asian youth, we Japanese are satisfied or feel comfortable of being status quo. That means that we always look to east. It's a totally different of your philosophy. Look east to America. We always agree and we always follow. So that although we are a member of Asian family, so if you have any opinion about this?
Thank you. Well, we believe that every country has something to teach other countries. Some countries are, of course, not well developed, others are well developed. But what happened when I came here way back in 1961, I saw the Japanese working hard to rebuild their country, and they seem to be very dedicated. I thought that we have that kind of value, that kind of attitude towards disaster and how to recover. I think it will be good for any country. You should not lose faith in your own ability. We want to learn that, not just about investment from Japan, but your work ethics, your sense of shame, to the point where if you do something, you fail to do something. In the good old days, you used to commit harakiri. Now you don't commit harakiri, but some still throw themselves off high buildings. But we think that this sense of shame is what drives Japan to produce the best quality product possible, because they don't want to be ashamed of their product. This is something worth adopting by any country. So Malaysia will still look east, not just at Japan. Of course, even before we look at east, at Korea, at Taiwan, China, and other countries, without losing sight of the West. The West have something to teach us, but the East also have a lot to teach us, and we believe that we have benefited from looking east.
One more question, yes, sir.
Titus North, University of Pittsburgh. We have recently been hearing increasingly belligerent rhetoric from and serious but unsubstantiated accusations from regarding Iran from Zionist elements in the Trump administration. What do you make of this ramped-up hostility towards Iran, and what is your position regarding any war against Iran?
Well, principally, we don't think any differences of attitudes or opinions should lead to threats of going to war. That is a bad thing to do. And Iran is accused of having weapons. So has Israel. Israel is a nuclear power. Iran has agreed not to become a nuclear power. And I think the parties to the agreement should honor that. You ask Iran to stop, and they have stopped, but now you are accusing that your stopping is not enough. You have to go beyond that. I don't know how far beyond. But I think this attitude of threats is something that is very primitive. I mean, just imagine in our society, if I don't like you, I punch your nose. Well, is that the way to solve problem? In our society, if you do that, there will be chaos in the country. And in the world society of nations, we should not utter threats against people, nor should we send battleships and things like that. The thing to do is to negotiate, to talk to them. I don't think Iran wants war. They don't want war. Iran is being accused of subverting other Arab countries. But we have 70,000 Iranians in Malaysia. And they are not refugees, but they prefer to come to Malaysia. We are Sunni Muslim, they are Shia. We have no problem with them. They live there, they respect our religion, we respect their religion. So the better thing to do is to help understand each other. We are mature enough, civilized enough to depend upon our ability to think and argue things out. You create a United Nations and then you ignore the United Nations. Who created the United Nations? The very people who today ignore the United Nations. This is what is happening in the world today. If the world today is having problem, it's because there are still some countries which likes to threaten people with their military strength. It's out of date. If you go to war, this whole world will be shattered.
Thank you. We have to bring the press conference to a close there. I'm afraid my last...
The lady has been holding up her hand for a long time.
You have time?
Yes. One more question.
I'm sorry. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Mahathir. Haruko Watanabe, HKW workshop. I've been your press and personal watcher for more than 30 years, and you are healthy and very healthy. And that lady asked question, the gentleman asked question, but I have my third questions. Japanese and Japanese government have trouble with our neighbors, two Koreans. Would you be kind enough to take your responsibility or your influence over these two countries and do the intermediate to help Japan to negotiate, get back to our long overdue problems?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, here I would like to ask Japanese to look west. In the West, you have two great antagonists between France and Germany, there never was any good relation. They were all fighting each other all the time. One time Alsace-Lorraine would be captured by the French, next by the German, then next by... They had fighting each other for years and years. And they had committed atrocities against each other. But today they are together. Because you can't live in the past. You have to understand that this is today's world. And we are working for our tomorrow, for our children. So you should forget about the past. There have been enough apologies being... Forget that happened 70 years ago, or more than 70 years ago. Yes, it was bad. We agree it was bad. But in war, that is what happens. So now I think if you look west at Germany and at France and at Britain, if they can become friends again, I think Malaysia, Japan, Korea, and China should also adopt that same attitude. Enough about apologies, but time is now for us to work together for the betterment of East Asia, because Asia is going to be an influential factor in the rest in the world that is coming along.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I think our press conference is concluded now. My last act here is to give the Prime Minister a 1-year honorary membership of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. So,
thank you.
And if I can ask everyone to please remain in your seats while the Prime Minister leaves the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you.